Good afternoon, everyone. This is Tuesday night's homework, February 27th. We're going to talk about social development today. We've already learned about cognitive development in infants and children, and now we're going to learn about social development, and you'll see there's a lot of connections and correlations. First connection, stranger anxiety. The fear that, of strangers that infants develop typically begins around 8 months of age. Right? And who can remember from the last module what also happens about 8 months of age? It's no coincidence that stranger anxiety and object permanence occur at the same time. Once you realize that someone is permanent, that when they're out of sight, they're not out of existence, that's when you start to become anxious about wanting to speak with that person again. That's also when we could, really recognize familiar versus unfamiliar faces. So baby 3-4 months of age will go with anyone. Once they hit the 8-9 month mark, they will only want to go with a parent or trusted familiar face. Attachment. So remember in class I said that there's like 4 or 5 different theories that make up half of your test in this unit. Attachment and all the theories about attachment is one of those. So the term means any emotional tie with another person, shown in young children by their seeking closeness to the caregiver and showing distress on separation. So attachment, we often use it like colloquially or imprecisely by saying, "Oh, I'm so attached to this friend or to this person." It's generally used regarding a caregiver, although later in life, someone who may have had poor attachment to their caregiver may show similarly poor attachment to a spouse or a dating partner. So this man down here, Harry Harlow, did this famous study, and you can see a picture of it over here, with monkeys. In this picture, you see these are two, fake mothers, right? This monkey could choose between two different, doll mothers. This mother on the right is very fluffy and cuddly. It's made of, soft, furry equipment. And the mother on the left is just a steel cage, but what that mother has is a bottle. So it was a mind-blowing discovery that the monkey will prefer to spend time with the doll, which kind of represents what it's more similar to what an actual monkey mother would be like. It's soft, it's warm, as opposed to being with the one that has food. Of course, the monkey has to eat, but even when it's eating, it'll stay attached to the warm, fuzzy quote-unquote mother, and not with the one that has the food. So all else being equal, we are more drawn to, as monkeys or as human beings, we are more drawn to closeness and warmth and intimacy than we are even to food. So we're going to talk about critical versus sensitive periods. We do have a critical period when it comes to language as human beings. But when it comes to attachment, we do not have a critical period. A critical period when it comes to attachment is more like imprinting. That's when certain animals form a strong attachment to the very first thing they see. Konrad Lorenz did this, a study with ducks. And he hung around these ducks, right, after they were hatching, and these ducks would follow Konrad around as if he were their parent, because it was the first thing the first living creature that they saw upon hatching. So we don't do that, right? Otherwise, we would all be attached to the doctor who delivered us in the emergency room, right? So thankfully, we don't imprint. Otherwise, OBGYN doctors would have thousands of people who looking to them as mother or father figures. So instead of a critical period, we have what's called a sensitive period. It's not that we become attached to the very first thing we see. But there is this time period, this first year especially of life, but really the first year or two, where we become attached due to the mere exposure. Remember mere exposure effect from social psych? Mere exposure to familiar things. So it's good. It means that, let's say a baby is adopted at 2-3 months of age and they didn't really get the attention they needed. It doesn't mean they're going to be unable to attach to someone else. It's a sensitive period, not a critical period. It's not as cut and dry. But if throughout the first year, 2 years of life, a child is neglected, then they may develop lifelong or at least very difficult to change attachment problems. And that's what we're going to discuss next. Ainsworth. You should know all about Ainsworth. She's the one who labeled the different types of attachment. She had this strange situation experiment. She'd put mother and infants together, right? I mean, the mothers who with their actual infant children who would come and volunteer for this experiment, or she would actually go to their home during the first 6 months. And then she would observe the 1-year-old in a laboratory, which is a strange situation, right? Imagine going to a laboratory, even as a 10, 11, 12-year-old might feel weird. Being in this weird lab room was especially disconcerting and uncomfortable for a 1-year-old infant. So infants that displayed what she called secure attachment, which was 60% in the study, in their mother's presence, they play comfortably. When she leaves the room, they become distressed. And when she returns, they seek to contact her. So that's the key part. People often think a securely attached infant wouldn't cry at all when the mom leaves. But that's not true. It's normal and healthy and good for an infant to cry when the mother leaves. Maybe cry for a minute or two or a few minutes, and then be comforted by the caregiver or the nanny or whoever they are, the preschool, and play with their friends in that setting, and then be happy to see mom or dad when she returns later. This situation was very gender specific, but this applies equally to a mother or father relationship. And the insecure attachment, there's 2 subtypes of insecure attachment: insecure anxious and insecure avoidant. Both aren't good. Insecure anxious means that you don't trust that your mom or dad is going to come back when they drop you off with that caregiver. So the entire time they're gone, or at least for an hour or more, you're screaming and crying and you're beside yourself that you don't trust that your parent will come back, because perhaps you've been in an abusive or neglectful situation in the past where your parent hasn't come back. If you have insecure avoidant attachment, that's the exact opposite, but still just as unhealthy. That's where you've gotten to the point where you're indifferent, right? You could not form an attachment at all. Again, it could be due to early childhood abuse and neglect, but instead of being overly anxious and worrying, oh my God, are they going to come back? You've totally emotionally cut yourself off. This is all subconscious, of course. These are infants, 1, 2-year-olds. You've cut yourself, you've emotionally detached yourself and gotten to the point where you, show no positive or negative emotion upon the caregiver dropping you off or upon the caregiver returning. When the insecure anxious caregiver returns, however many hours later, they're going to run to that caregiver and never want to let go because they don't trust that they'll ever see them again. But the insecure avoidant kid is not going to care when they come or go. So the ideal form of attachment is secure, where you are upset your caregiver leaves, but you get over it, and then you're happy to see them when they come back. All right, so this is the same thing we said in a chart form, and this is the percentage of infants who cried when their mothers left. Now, you can see here the number is very low before 8 months because we don't yet have that sense of object permanence. Before this point in the chart, if mom leaves, okay, so she doesn't exist anymore. She's out of my mind. She does not exist as anything. So there's nothing to cry about. After that point, you see that real spike. And then where the chart ends, it kind of, we're 2.5, 3 years. By this point, it starts to go back down. So by the time a securely attached child goes to kindergarten at age 5, fewer of them are going to cry, maybe the first day or two. But over the course of kindergarten, fewer of them are going to cry because they realize mom's going to come back, and they're in kindergarten, they're mature enough to be several hours without mom. All right, temperament. Temperament is something that is much more nature than nurture. Temperament is a person's characteristic emotional reactivity and intensity. The 3 main types of temperament in baby are easy, right? Where they go to sleep easily, they wake up easily, they're fed easily. These are like the quiet children who they're very happy to see their parents, but give no issues, don't cry too much. Difficult are the ones that are fussy all the time, and slow to warm up babies are the ones who kind of don't really mesh with or connect with their caregiver so much. Fascinatingly, that similar behaviors are shown in adulthood. That doesn't mean that a difficult infant is going to become an adult who's like crying hysterically all day, right? They exhibit different, more age-appropriate ways of being easy or difficult, quote unquote. But temperament is very consistent throughout the lifespan. All right, next, the following unit, our Wednesday unit, is going to be all about Erickson. But for right now, I want to introduce him briefly, that he says the main task, the main challenge of infancy is for a child to develop a sense of basic trust, a sense that the world is predictable and trustworthy, and that's demonstrated, that's formed by appropriate experiences with responsible caregivers. If that's not formed, then that could lead to a lot of problems later in life with attachment with parents, peers, and romantic partners. So, in early childhood, this picture we're looking at is from the 1980s or 90s, I believe, from these Romanian orphanages, where there was we could talk about the social studies aspect of it. There was a huge number of children in orphanages. They were, even if they were fed, they were often deprived of attachment. Right? Think back to the Harlow monkey experiment we said, where body contact and having face time and with a caregiver is almost as important as food and drink and being fed and taken care of physically. So there's a correlation, right? Not causation, but correlation between this early deprivation of attachment and having lower IQ and higher anxiety. But not for everyone, right? Because it's really a mixture of nature and nurture. There are certain people who may be predisposed to have anxious genes, and that combined with the deprivation brings out the higher anxiety. But for a very resilient child, in spite of the anxiety, in spite of deprivation, they really come out of it, blossoming once they're eventually out of that situation. All right, self-concept, very easy concept, it's very term to know. It's all of our thoughts and feelings about ourselves in response to the question, who am I? Right? Who am I? Am I a man, a woman, Christian, Jewish, Muslim? What's my race, ethnicity? Am I an athlete? Am I a nerd? Am I a brother? Am I a sister? Am I a father? Am I a son, daughter? Whatever I am, who am I? A skier? It can go on forever, right? Who am I? That's self-concept. Self-esteem, we already know, is how you feel about yourself. And self-awareness is knowing what you are and kind of what you want to be in life. All right, parenting styles. This is another one of those theories that you should know for that 50% of the test. Parenting styles: authoritarian, permissive, and authoritative. Numbers 1 and 3 are very easily confused because they look almost similar. So, authoritarian is a parent who just says, do what I say, I'm giving you rules, you better follow me. Very strict, doesn't engage much in conversation with the child about what should or shouldn't happen, just kind of barks orders at them, says this is what you're going to do, and I don't care if you like it or not, I don't want to hear if you like it or not, these are the rules. Permissive is the other extreme. Let's kind of, whatever the child wants to do. Oh, you want to go to a party till 3 a.m.? All right, enjoy yourself. You want to go to 4 a.m.? Okay, just try not to come home too late. Very timid, passive parenting, letting the child do whatever they want. Authoritative parenting, this is what's viewed as the best. Authoritative is universally viewed as the best form of parenting. It's where you're demanding, you're strict. You're not going to let your child go to that party till 3 a.m., but at the same time, you're responsive. You may collaborate with them on deciding what the household rules should be for that child. You want to hear what they have to say. If they don't like your rules, you may not change your mind, but you want to hear them out. You're going to very clearly explain the rationale behind what the rules that you give them, because you want them to be part of that process. So a mnemonic of remembering this is authoritative. Sounds like give, and it's like there's a give and take. So there's a give and take in authoritative parenting. So that's how you distinguish that from authoritarian. So can we determine causation here? You should know by this point in the year, we cannot, right? causation between parenting style and children's behavior. There's many factors that may determine why a parent acts a certain way. Is a parent acting that way in response to the child's positive or negative behavior? What comes first, chicken or the egg? Last but not least, as with every unit, we like to point out culture. In westernized culture, children are raised to be very independent. In more traditional Eastern or African cultures, when they say Asian, they really mean like East Asian cultures, typically feel that what shames a child shames the family, and brings honor to the family brings honor to the self. So it's much more of a collectivist culture, that you're in it for your family, and you want to do what makes them proud, not just what you want to do in life. All right, hope everyone enjoyed. We will see you all tomorrow.